The Torgar Belt was once a bustling hub of trade and innovation. Its myriad stations floated in orderly formation, each a shining beacon of civilization. That was before the Deathworlders arrived. It began on New Karsten Station, the largest and most advanced of the Torgar outposts. Once home to thousands of scientists, engineers, and diplomats, it prided itself on being a neutral ground for interspecies negotiations. Most days were routine, research breakthroughs announced in hushed conference rooms, trade agreements signed with little fanfare, and supply shipments coming and going. But all that changed on the day the first Deathworlder ship emerged from the void. The ship was unremarkable at first glance. Its hull bore no distinctive markings, and its engines were clearly of a design unfamiliar to the major galactic powers. When it docked, the station's automated systems ran the usual scans. They found nothing amiss. No weapons of mass destruction, no trace of bioweapons, just a small crew of individuals with standard life support needs. They identified themselves as humans from a planet called Earth. At first, the station's administrators treated the humans with polite curiosity. Earth had been catalogued centuries ago, a small blue planet in an unremarkable star system. Its people were known for their resilience, some would say stubbornness, and for the harsh conditions they called home. The galactic community had long since dismissed Earth as a backwater, not worth the effort of proper first contact. But the humans had not been idle. While their neighbors were busy debating trade tariffs and political alliances, Earth had been fighting for survival on a planet that seemed determined to kill them. Hurricanes leveled their cities. Earthquakes shattered their infrastructure. Predatory wildlife and dangerous microorganisms pushed them to the brink. Yet they had thrived. In fact, they had flourished. The human crew on New Karsten Station claimed to represent a unified Earth. They spoke of their world's newfound prosperity, their rapid technological advancements, and their desire to join the galactic community as equals. It all sounded so reasonable, so hopeful, that the station's leaders agreed to let the humans set up a small trade office. Over the following weeks, Earth's representatives began to integrate themselves into station life. Station personnel were soon impressed by the humans' work ethic. The humans operated around the clock, seemingly immune to the fatigue that slowed most other species. Their ability to adapt to new environments and protocols was unparalleled. They learned alien languages in weeks. They studied complex technologies with a level of focus that made even the most experienced engineers envious. Their traders brokered deals that brought profits to everyone involved. But it wasn't just their efficiency that stood out. The humans were bold. They did things no one else would dare. When a containment breach threatened one of the station's labs, a human technician volunteered to enter the hazardous zone to repair the damage. The station's regulations forbade such an action, no being could survive the exposure. Yet the human insisted, and against all odds, they succeeded. The repairs held, the station was saved, and the human walked out with only minor injuries. Word spread quickly. The human's reputation grew, and with it, their influence. Other stations in the Torgar Belt took notice. They invited human envoys to visit, eager to learn the secrets of their resilience. The humans, in turn, shared their knowledge freely. They taught new methods of disaster preparedness, shared blueprints for durable infrastructure, and even introduced groundbreaking medical treatments. It wasn't long before humans were seen as indispensable. They weren't just survivors, they were innovators, problem solvers, and allies who could be counted on in times of crisis. As more stations welcomed human advisors and engineers, the Torgar Belt began to transform. Once static societies found themselves swept up in a wave of progress. In just a few short years, the humans had become a vital part of the region's economy and culture. But not everyone was pleased. Established powers, accustomed to dominating the Torgar Belt's politics and trade, grew wary of the humans' rising influence. Whispers of Deathworlder ambition began to circulate. Some accused the humans of manipulating the system, of using their resilience and ingenuity as tools to seize control. These claims, however, were hard to prove. The humans seemed genuinely cooperative, always willing to share their knowledge and work alongside others. Then came the first sign that things were not as simple as they appeared. One of the smaller stations, Yareth Prime, experienced a devastating reactor failure. Before help could arrive, human engineers stationed nearby had already begun repairs. They stabilized the reactor, saving countless lives, and even upgraded the station's outdated systems. It was a noble act, but when the dust settled, Yareth Prime was no longer just a trading hub. It had become a strategic outpost, with human-designed defenses and infrastructure. The pattern repeated itself. Wherever disaster struck, humans were there. They rebuilt what was broken, fortified what was weak, and left behind systems that only they fully understood. Each time, the stations became more dependent on human expertise. What started as mutual cooperation began to look like quiet domination. And so, without firing a single shot, the Deathworlders from Earth began their takeover of the Torgar Belt. One station at a time, they embedded themselves into the fabric of galactic society. Their methods were subtle but effective. They did not conquer through violence. Instead, they outworked, outsmarted, and outlasted everyone else. It was only the beginning. As the Torgar Belt prospered under their guidance, the humans set their sights beyond. Their reputation as problem solvers and innovators spread across the galaxy. They were called to more distant worlds, invited to more influential councils. Every invitation was a step closer to dominance. The Deathworlders had proven their worth, and now they were on a path that would change the galaxy forever. The cycle repeated, another outpost faced calamity, and once again, humans were there. When a waterborne virus swept through Haven's reach, threatening an entire colony's survival, it was a human medical team that developed the countermeasure. In the immediate aftermath, they established permanent research facilities, promising to safeguard the region's health. And just as before, their presence became indispensable. In the wake of such events, many locals felt grateful. They praised the humans' determination, their willingness to step into danger for the good of others. This gratitude, however, often blinded them to the quiet shift in power. Each new crisis resolved by the humans left them in greater control of vital systems, water purification, power generation, transportation routes. Little by little, they assumed responsibilities no one else wanted. Meanwhile, Earth's representatives expanded their influence not just through action, but through culture. It began simply. Human art and music found their way into station markets. At first, they were novelties, strange melodies and colorful imagery from a distant, dangerous world. But as more people were exposed to these pieces, they began to admire the depth of human creativity. The harsh realities of their homeworld seemed to produce a kind of raw, unfiltered beauty that resonated with many. Human stories also took root. Tales of survival against impossible odds, of perseverance in the face of nature's wrath, became popular among the younger generations. These stories, often presented as simple entertainment, held subtle lessons about resilience, self-reliance, and unity. In time, more people on these outposts began adopting Earth-inspired traditions and celebrations, further intertwining human culture with their own. Still, not everyone was thrilled. The Torgar Belt Council, a loose coalition of powerful station leaders, began holding private discussions about the humans' growing influence. Some counselors argued that the humans were genuine allies, that their innovations had lifted the belt to unprecedented prosperity. Others, however, worried about the long-term implications. If the humans controlled critical infrastructure, what would happen if their interests ever diverged from those of the local populations? The council, for all its authority, struggled to find a consensus. One counselor, a pragmatic merchant named Garen, took it upon himself to learn more. He visited human-run facilities, spoke with their engineers, and studied their agreements with other outposts. What he found was troubling. While humans rarely insisted on formal ownership, their contracts often included clauses granting them long-term operational control. They also employed a subtle system of incentives, offering advanced technology in exchange for oversight of key systems. The result: they didn't need to conquer by force, they simply made themselves too valuable to refuse. Garen presented his findings to the council, urging caution. But his colleagues were divided. Some saw his report as paranoia, an overreaction to a group that had done nothing but help. Others quietly agreed but feared the consequences of challenging the humans. After all, Earth's representatives had proven themselves to be resourceful and influential. Crossing them might lead to isolation, or worse. Meanwhile, on the ground, humans continued their relentless march. They established advanced training programs, inviting local engineers and scientists to learn their methods. While these programs were voluntary, anyone who declined often found themselves left behind as stations rapidly upgraded to human-designed systems. Over time, it became less of a choice and more of a necessity to adopt human standards. Despite these undercurrents of concern, the Deathworlders remained outwardly friendly and cooperative. They attended festivals, joined community projects, and even assisted in disaster relief efforts on other planets beyond the belt. To most observers, they seemed like ideal partners, always willing to lend a hand. And to be fair, the quality of life did improve. Outposts that once struggled to maintain basic services now thrived with cutting-edge infrastructure. But for every improvement, there was a cost. The balance of power shifted further toward Earth. By the time anyone noticed, it was too late. With every station they touched, the humans left a deeper imprint. Their presence was no longer confined to engineers and traders, it extended to bureaucrats, educators, and security consultants. The humans worked not just to build and repair, but to teach. They offered streamlined procedures for station governance, simplified training regimens for local workers, and defense strategies that would have been unthinkable a decade earlier. Many station leaders accepted these changes with open arms. To them, the humans' help was invaluable. New Karsten Station, once a beacon of innovation, now relied on Earth's technology for everything from life support to trade logistics. Haven's Reach, though small, became a hub of human research, and its new medical facilities handled patients from dozens of nearby stations. The pattern continued: human expertise turned struggling outposts into model colonies. The locals couldn't deny the results: safer environments, stronger economies, and more stable communities. Yet as beneficial as these changes appeared, a quiet unease began to spread among the more cautious observers. Station administrators who had previously held significant authority found themselves sidelined. Major decisions increasingly required the input of human advisors. In some cases, entire governing councils deferred to the recommendations of Earth's representatives, trusting their experience and efficiency over their own judgment. Among the locals, opinions varied. Some viewed the humans as saviors, their actions driven by genuine goodwill. Others began to see them as something more insidious, not conquerors in the traditional sense, but a force that steadily consumed every ounce of independence the stations once had. The term soft occupation started to circulate in private discussions, though no one dared to say it openly. One of the most outspoken critics was Garen, the pragmatic merchant who had previously warned the Torgar Belt Council. While his colleagues remained divided or afraid to act, Garen continued his investigations. He uncovered countless examples of human contracts that appeared fair on the surface but contained clauses granting Earth oversight for decades to come. He found that human advisors were often placed in key administrative roles, ensuring their influence would endure even if formal agreements were renegotiated. More troubling, he learned that humans were discreetly acquiring rights to vital resources, water supplies, rare minerals, and energy reserves, through intermediaries. Garen brought his findings to his allies, urging them to take a stand before it was too late. But many station leaders balked. They argued that without human support, their outposts would collapse. The humans had become too integral to daily life, their departure would bring ruin. Some dismissed Garen's concerns as fearmongering, while others admitted their dependence on Earth's expertise made resistance impossible. Even those who sympathized with Garen were paralyzed by fear. They had watched as other critics mysteriously lost influence, their voices drowned out by a flood of pro-human sentiment. No one wanted to be the next target. As the council remained gridlocked, the humans pressed forward. They expanded their training programs, promising to create a new generation of local leaders who could carry on Earth's legacy of resilience. They opened cultural centers, offering free access to human literature, art, and history. They established scholarships for young scholars, inviting them to study on Earth and return with advanced degrees. Each of these efforts further cemented their presence, not by force, but through goodwill and opportunity. Some of the younger generation idolized the humans. They saw Earth as a place of endless possibility, a world that had overcome every challenge it faced, producing a people who seemed unstoppable. To these youths, becoming more like the Deathworlders wasn't just desirable, it was aspirational. They learned human languages, adopted human traditions, and even reshaped their own identities to align with Earth's ideals. As they rose to prominence within their own communities, they brought with them a mindset that naturally favored human interests. By the time anyone truly understood the scope of what was happening, the Torgar Belt was no longer just a collection of independent stations. It had become a unified network, bound together by Earth's systems, Earth's methods, and Earth's people. The Deathworlders didn't declare dominion, they didn't need to. They had outworked, outsmarted, and outlasted every rival. And as they looked beyond the belt to the rest of the galaxy, they knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy beyond the Torgar Belt had taken notice. Reports of human involvement spread to other regions, whispered about in council chambers and debated in interstellar trading halls. Some saw Earth's influence in the Torgar Belt as a model to emulate, a peaceful rise to prominence that brought prosperity wherever humans were involved. Others viewed it with deep suspicion, wondering if the same pattern would soon repeat in their territories. The debate, however, was largely academic. No one had seen a species from a Deathworld achieve so much, so quickly, and with so little resistance. It was during this period that the humans made their next move. While their efforts in the Torgar Belt continued, they began reaching out to the larger galactic powers, established empires, powerful trading consortia, and ancient federations. At first, these overtures were modest. Earth's representatives offered limited trade deals, shared a few technological advancements, and presented themselves as eager newcomers willing to learn. Their simple, unassuming approach won them cautious allies and, more importantly, access. Once inside these new networks, the humans applied the same strategies that had worked so well in the Torgar Belt. They solved problems others couldn't. They built infrastructure in regions long ignored by the major powers. When disputes arose between rival factions, human mediators stepped in, earning a reputation for fairness and practicality. Every success increased their influence, and with each new partnership, they gained a foothold in territories far beyond their own borders. As before, their progress was steady and deliberate. In each sector they entered, they identified what was most needed: more reliable transportation routes, safer orbital refineries, more efficient agricultural systems, and provided solutions. Local governments quickly grew dependent on Earth's expertise. Once again, the humans didn't demand control. They simply became indispensable. In one notable instance, a distant mining colony on the edge of the Nyrax system suffered a catastrophic accident. Its orbital platforms, which supplied rare materials critical to starship production, were left inoperable. While the local government struggled to coordinate a response, human engineers arrived with a plan. They stabilized the platforms, restored production, and even improved the safety protocols. In gratitude, the colony granted the humans long-term operational oversight. Earth's representatives were careful to maintain a collaborative tone, framing their involvement as mutually beneficial. But to outsiders, it was clear, the humans were now firmly entrenched in yet another critical industry. Back in the Torgar belt, whispers of dissent hadn't disappeared entirely. A few voices still raised concerns about the humans' growing control. Garen, the merchant who had once sounded the alarm, remained vocal despite being marginalized by his peers. He continued to document every instance of human expansion, compiling a detailed record that he hoped would one day convince the Council to act. He also sought out allies in other regions, sharing his findings with anyone who would listen. Despite his efforts, the humans' hold on the Torgar belt only deepened. Their training programs expanded, producing a new generation of local administrators who had been taught by Earth's best. Cultural exchange centers flourished, solidifying human traditions and values in the hearts and minds of young station inhabitants. Even the infrastructure itself, built to human specifications, ensured that Earth's presence was literally built into the framework of the Belt's society. And while Garen's warnings went largely ignored, a few influential figures outside the Belt took notice. A coalition of independent worlds in the Terran cluster began to quietly monitor Earth's activities. They reviewed trade agreements, observed human-led construction projects, and kept a close eye on the flow of goods and resources. This coalition, though small, recognized a pattern emerging. Earth's cooperation often led to long-term dependence. For the humans, this was no accident. Though they maintained the appearance of altruism, their actions were guided by a long-term vision. Every contract, every partnership, every training program served a larger purpose. They weren't just building alliances, they were building an empire. But they were doing it in a way no one had ever attempted. Instead of conquering through force, they conquered through necessity. By making themselves indispensable, they ensured that resistance would be seen not as defiance, but as self-sabotage. And as their influence spread across new sectors, the humans began to realize something else. They weren't just surviving in the galaxy's harsh environment. They were thriving. Every challenge they faced, every new obstacle, only made them stronger. The lessons learned from Earth's unforgiving landscapes, its earthquakes, hurricanes, and predators, had prepared them for a galaxy that was, by comparison, far more forgiving. Where others struggled, the Deathworlders excelled. For the first time in its history, the galaxy was witnessing a new kind of ascendancy. It wasn't the rapid expansion of a conquering armada or the slow accumulation of power through ancient treaties. It was something else entirely, something that no one, not even the humans themselves, could have predicted when they first left Earth. As the humans extended their influence, they remained careful never to appear overtly aggressive. While it was true that they had a strong military, born of necessity on their tumultuous homeworld, they rarely showcased it. Their warships stayed close to their own systems, and their fleets didn't patrol foreign sectors. Instead, the humans emphasized their peaceful ambitions and cooperative efforts. To many, it was this restraint that made them seem trustworthy. But the reality was more complex. Behind the scenes, human leaders understood the value of being prepared for any contingency. The same relentless adaptability that had allowed them to master Earth's hostile conditions now applied to the galaxy at large. They built ships that could operate in environments others couldn't withstand. They trained their personnel to handle situations where most would falter. If they were ever tested, they would be ready. In the meantime, their presence continued to expand. They established embassies on the more prominent worlds, not only in the Torgar belt but across the neighboring sectors. These weren't just places for diplomatic meetings, they became centers for cultural exchange, trade coordination, and strategic planning. Each embassy brought a new layer of influence, as local leaders found it easier, and more profitable, to rely on human expertise than to develop their own. It was around this time that Earth's representatives began focusing on strategic industries. Energy production was the first target. Humans introduced innovative reactor designs that doubled or tripled the output of standard facilities. At first, they shared these upgrades freely, installing them at cost and training locals to operate them. As always, this fostered goodwill. Over time, however, these reactors became so vital to local economies that no one wanted to risk losing access to human expertise. And while Earth never outright demanded control, it was understood that continued cooperation meant leaving these reactors in human hands. Next came transportation and logistics. The galaxy's older trade routes were reliable, but slow. Earth introduced new navigation software, faster drive systems, and streamlined cargo handling procedures. Suddenly, goods that once took weeks to move between stations could arrive in days. Once again, they made these innovations available to anyone willing to work with them. And as before, this generosity had a long-term cost. The more stations that adopted Earth's methods, the more dependent they became. For a time, it seemed like every new partnership was a win-win. Local populations enjoyed unprecedented prosperity. Worlds that had once been on the edge of collapse now thrived. Trade flourished, new industries emerged, and interstellar travel became more accessible than ever. The humans never once claimed dominion, but their hand could be felt in every major economic development. Still, there were those who questioned their ultimate intentions. A few influential leaders in the neighboring KLYSS Confederacy began to raise concerns. The KLYSS were known for their cautious approach to foreign affairs, and they viewed Earth's growing network with a wary eye. While they appreciated the improvements human technology had brought, they couldn't ignore the fact that every new advance also seemed to shift power toward the Deathworlders. One KLYSS ambassador, a methodical and meticulous figure named Varkan, began to investigate. He analyzed trade data, compared resource flows, and reviewed centuries of records. What he found was undeniable: regions that accepted Earth's help always experienced rapid growth, but at the cost of independence. Over time, they became reliant on human infrastructure, human expertise, and human connections. Varkan didn't accuse the humans of wrongdoing, but he quietly began advising his government to limit their involvement. The humans, of course, noticed this hesitation. Rather than push back directly, they adjusted their strategy. They made sure to emphasize the voluntary nature of every partnership. They highlighted their ongoing contributions to the greater galactic community, how they had revitalized struggling outposts, solved environmental crises, and fostered peace between rival factions. By publicly championing the idea of cooperation, they made any opposition seem selfish or short-sighted. Over the next few decades, the pattern held. Wherever they went, the humans brought improvement. And wherever they improved, they stayed. Their presence became a fact of life, woven into the fabric of the galaxy's economy, politics, and culture. While the galaxy's older powers maintained their formal independence, their reliance on Earth's innovations ensured that they would never truly be free of its influence. The galaxy had always been a vast and chaotic place, with countless factions vying for power. But in the shadow of the Deathworlders' quiet ascendancy, a new reality began to take shape. The humans didn't need to claim half the galaxy by force. They had achieved it through a subtler, more enduring kind of conquest, one of necessity, trust, and mutual benefit. As the humans' influence grew, their name took on new meaning. Deathworlders had once been a term whispered with awe and caution, used to describe a species tough enough to thrive on a planet designed to break them. Now it was spoken with respect and even a touch of fear. They were no longer outsiders from a forgotten backwater, they had become a force woven into the very structure of the galaxy. The turning point came not from some grand invasion or galaxy-spanning war, but from an unexpected crisis. A massive stellar event, a rogue black hole grazing a densely populated star cluster, threatened billions. The cluster's old defensive measures were woefully inadequate, and as the black hole's trajectory became clear, panic spread. Entire systems scrambled to evacuate, while leaders begged for help from their allies. But no other faction had the resources, the coordination, or the sheer will to handle such a catastrophe. The humans, however, stepped forward without hesitation. Over the years, they had quietly built a fleet of emergency response ships, stocked with advanced equipment and manned by personnel trained in dealing with extreme situations. While others debated and hesitated, the humans acted. They moved entire populations to safety, stabilized collapsing orbital stations, and constructed massive energy fields to mitigate the worst effects of the black hole's gravitational pull. What should have been a disaster that left a dozen systems in ruins instead became a triumph of coordinated effort. Afterward, no one could deny what the humans had become. They were not conquerors, nor were they mere traders or technicians. They were the galaxy's first responders, its problem solvers, its innovators. They had taken the tools they'd forged on their own harsh planet and used them to thrive in a galaxy that had never seen their equal. Their influence wasn't enforced by fleets or armies, it was a product of trust, reliance, and necessity. In the years that followed, more and more regions turned to Earth for guidance. When old trade routes became too risky, the humans opened new ones. When conflicts arose, human mediators were called in to broker peace. When diseases broke out, human doctors and researchers delivered the cures. Over time, their network of allies grew so vast that half the galaxy depended on Earth not just for trade or technology, but for stability itself. There were, of course, detractors. A few powerful empires grumbled that the humans had stolen influence without ever firing a shot. Others accused them of being manipulative, of using their help as a means to gain control. But these complaints rarely gained traction. The humans never forced anyone's hand, they only offered solutions to problems others couldn't solve. And with every solution, they became more entrenched. The final step in their rise came quietly, almost imperceptibly. Earth, the planet once dismissed as a forgotten death world, was now the hub of a galactic network unlike anything in recorded history. They didn't rule through mandates or decrees, they didn't send out conquerors or warlords. They didn't have to. Instead, they led through example and necessity. And in doing so, they reshaped the galaxy itself. Half the galaxy now lived under systems inspired, if not outright designed, by Earth. From transportation to education to governance, human principles and methods formed the foundation of countless worlds. The Deathworlders had become more than a mere power, they were the glue that held entire regions together. Their strength didn't lie in dominance, but in their ability to bring order to chaos, to find solutions where others only saw problems. And so, without war or conquest, the Deathworlders took over half the galaxy. They did it not through weapons or fear, but through resilience, adaptability, and an unyielding drive to succeed. In the end, they proved that the greatest power wasn't found in towering armadas or sprawling empires. It was found in the ability to endure, to adapt, and to build a future that others would follow.